try to look at certainly the irrigation system and how
especially
efficient
within
it's
rural districts. I think that's very key. Advantages also include.
Hi, welcome to Going Green. I'm David Huboi, Chairman of the Green Business Committee of the San Benito County Chamber of Commerce and host for Going Green TV. Going Green is brought to you by the Chamber to promote economic vitality along with environmental sustainability. To fulfill this commitment, the Chamber supports meeting present needs without compromising the needs of future generations. Today, we have a 4-member panel discussion on the Pinnacles National Park with our special guests, Nichole Andler, Chief of Interpretation and Education for the Pinnacles National Park, and we have Mark Paxton, local naturalist and educator and journalist. These guests will be interviewed by myself and Shawn Novack, my co-host. Hey, well, let's get started. Welcome on the show, Nichole and Mark and Shawn. And I just want to talk with, the reason we're having this 4-panel discussion here is as of January 10th, President Obama signed the National Park Act. It was authored by a congressman from Carmel, Sam Farr, with the help of Barbara Boxer and Jeff Denham. And so as of today, actually January 10th, the Pinnacles National Monument is now a national park. So I'd like to talk first of all, just discuss the little bit about the background of the park, the history, the size of it, and the demographics of the users. Nichole, would you like to start?
Sure. Pinnacles has been, I think, a park that has constantly been growing. Not only has it grown in favor with people around here, once people come to visit, they want to come back again and again, but literally in size, Pinnacles has been expanded several times. This last time, our big change was not actually any addition of land, but was from a national monument to a national park. And that one little change of a word really makes a big difference in the way that people see us.
Mm-hmm. I guess I was reading a little bit about the geology. It was, in my understanding, it started from like an ancient volcano that kind of creeped northward along the San Andreas, the San Andreas Fault. And then in its path, the remnants and the debris, the rock debris, eventually formed these talus caves and craggy spires.
Yeah, exactly. It was a big volcanic field, and it was part of what's called the Novack Formation down near Los Angeles.
Lancaster, no?
Exactly, yes, at Lancaster. Good job. And so for over 23 million years, Pinnacles has been moving northward to where it is now, and slowly along the San Andreas Fault. So all those little bumps are helping to move Pinnacles a little further north, because it's still going today.
If you don't mind waiting a few more million years, it'll be right next door to Hollister. So it'll be much more convenient.
Yeah, it would be, yeah. It's a little bit of a drive out there, but I remember when I first moved to Hollister with our family, we used to go out to, do some hiking on the eastern area where it's kind of a woodsy area with some streams and riparian areas. And then later we went to the western through Soledad and went on it was very hot that day, I remember. We went on a very strenuous hike up through this mountainous area, and I saw some condors there, and I stopped. I had my sketch pad, my trusty little sketch pad, and I stopped to do a sketch, and I thought, wow, this is just incredible, And I must say, the first peoples that inhabited that we know of were the Ohlone Indian group, and part of that group was the Matsun tribe, and then as I was doing a little research, after the Spanish mission came established, and then that kind of depopulated the Indians. But there was a gentleman by the name of Schuler Heen, who in 1881 was a homesteader from Michigan, and he kind of was in awe of the park and brought together some tours there from Stanford professors that led to a Fresno congressman to eventually you know, Theodore Roosevelt.
Elicited the help from David Starr Jordan from Stanford. So, so yeah,
Right,
yeah.
yes, Dr. Jordan. And Gifford Pinchot, who was, he was the Chief of Forest Service, and then through the Antiquities Act, it became a national monument in 1908 with Theodore Roosevelt. And the National Park Service, I guess, was established in 1916. And if I just want to quote their mission statement, it was to conserve the scenery and the natural and historic objects and wildlife within, and to provide for the enjoyment to leave them unimpaired for future generations. So, so you know, one of the things that the caves, you know, that in Bear Gulch and there's several species of bats, and of course it's home to the California condor, and and as we all know, you know, Mark, he leads birding tours, and I think, do you want to talk a little bit about one of the unique features of the park is the condors, and I guess I understand that they live to be 50 years old and they have long nesting cycles, and it's one of the, I think 18 or 28 have been released there over the years.
The Pinnacles flock is standing at about 30 now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think they're kind of a marquee species for the park. There are a number of important and threatened species that call the park home. But the condor is, as I said, kind of a marquee species. You're looking at a bird that does live in excess of 50 years. They form very lasting pair bonds. Typically, they have a very low rate of reproduction. Typically, a pair lays one egg every couple of years. And they care for the chick for a long period of time. They're very social birds, but mostly what I think people find remarkable about them is just their sheer size. You're looking at a bird with a 9.5-foot wingspan that weighs over 20 pounds, that can soar for hours without a beat of its wings, and that routinely leaves its roost and forages, you know, out 100 miles or more in the space of a day.
Is the population on its way back now? I know there was some issues with lead poisoning and you know, lead bullets and lead paint and that type of thing.
Environmental lead remains an issue. The population is slowly recovering because of active management. And it was very controversial when the last condor was taken from the wild. There were fewer than 30 wild condors, California condors, left on the planet. And that was a really bold move, and a lot of the science had to be invented as the biologists went along. Lead is in the environment, but with the cooperation of a lot of sporting groups and with an education and outreach campaign that Nichole could probably talk more about, there is a growing acceptance of alternative ammunition that offers kind of the best of both worlds. It's effective ammunition for sportsmen, and it doesn't leave behind any sort of toxic legacy. And some people regard lead in the pursuit of game as a family health issue too. And nobody is eager to ingest lead. So.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, Nichole, are the condors there year-round, or they go somewhere else?
There's potential to see the condors year-round in the park. The best time, though, is you know, like in the springtime during the breeding season. Actually, just a week ago, I was orienting some staff to the park, and we were walking back from the campground, right from the area where we suggest people go to look for condors, and this bird tilted just a little bit, and you could see the flash of white on the underside of his wings, and so right there in that moment, we got to see condors, you know, just a few days ago.
Now, I understand this time of year the falcons inhabit the park, is that right?
Yeah, and Pinnacles is a place that has an extraordinary number of prairie falcons. And so our monitoring program is up and running. This morning I got an early morning email from one of our biologists, and you know, he was just sending out an email before he went out to go and observe the birds for the day. So we do have advisories where we ask people to stay out of certain areas if there are raptors nesting in those areas, or condors if they were there also nesting in the park. And so we get a lot of good feedback from the community. They sort of self-comply.
The climbing community in particular, because these birds are on crags have been enthusiastic in embracing the seasonal restrictions, which is great. I mean, everybody likes to feel good and like they're doing their part.
Sure.
Yeah, and Nichole mentioned for visitors to the east side that are interested in seeing condors, one of the best spots to see them, and the place where I often refer to people to, is from right in front of the visitor center, but facing the ridge that's behind the campground. You can frequently see several, and it's kind of fun when visitors see me down there with binoculars and a scope. They'll often say, "Hey, have you seen any condors? Do you know where I can look and see a condor?" It's sort of fun to be standing in that parking lot and say, "Yonder."
That's great.
Great. Well, you know, we have a lot of topics to cover today about the Pinnacles Park, and I know that there was a general management plan that I guess it took the place of the 1975 master plan. You want to talk a little bit about that and tell the audience? I know it went through, got some public input on it, and where are we now with the management plan?
We're right about here.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, the Jeff General
Nice
Management
picture.
Plan, the public comment period just closed a couple of weeks ago. So what we do is we take those public comments and review them, and any strong suggestions or things like that, consider those in with moving forward. But one of the big things we're going to do is, of course, edit the components in there that say monument and change that to park, especially in the preferred alternative, our alternative that kind of marries the two goals of the park with protecting the resource and providing enjoyment for the visitor. And so this document will likely for the next 20 years help to guide us with what we'll be doing next with Pinnacles as we go along into the future, developing things to help provide protection to the resource as well as provide additional services for visitors.
When you were formulating the general management plan, was it anticipated that the Pinnacles Park was going to become a national park?
That's a good question. I don't think it was at the forefront until we got to like this last bit here when we were going through the open comment period. I think then it was kind of like, on all of our minds that it was something that was about to happen or probably going to happen very soon.
Yeah, because I think it would be now with being a national park, for example, that compared to Yellowstone, 3.4 million people visit Yellowstone annually, as compared to 167,000 for the Pinnacles. But I think that's going to change pretty soon. Wouldn't you say? Now it's national park status, and more people will want to come by and check it out, right?
Yeah, 3.4 million people. I don't know that we'll see those numbers. I don't know if Pinnacles could handle those numbers, but we will see an uptick in our visitation now that we've become a national park. You see a lot of international visitors. They'll find out, we're going to California, Arizona, and we're the national parks, so they'll be looking for us. And of course, we're getting a lot of attention because we've gone from monument to park. And so regionally, we'll see more people coming in to see us because now that we're a national park, well, what's there?
And Pinnacles will be America's newest national park for some time. National parks are America's premier public lands, and there are only 59 of them with the addition of Pinnacles. And the last national park before Pinnacles was created a decade ago. So Pinnacles is going to remain America's newest national park for some years to come.
I was looking at the plan, the graphics, and the general management plan, and it was interesting, a legend that it had primitive zone, semi-primitive zone, front country zone, cultural interpretation, and special research zone. You want to just kind of give us an executive summary what those zones are about?
Sure. The primitive zones, those are the areas that you go out to and there's not much and most likely no development of any kind. It's your wilderness experience. Your semi-primitive zones would be some of those areas around the trails, like if you're hiking up to Scout Peak, there's a restroom up there, which we have there to help protect the resources so that people aren't leaving anything behind in the woods, so to speak, when they're out there. And then the front country zones, those are the areas where we'll have like visitor centers and the ranger programs. in the future, we hope to have some kind of education and science camp established on site as well. So those types of things.
I was curious, any of the public comments, does anything really stand out?
We haven't seen those yet.
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah.
I was just kind of curious when the public gets involved. I'm sure there's some great ideas and
yeah,
some wacky ones.
Well, in general, we're finding people to be very supportive.
That's great.
Yeah. And it was interesting when I was reading through the general management plan, one of the priorities was to balance some historic structures out there, that in some new development, there will be new development, with riparian areas, environmental needs to be assessed. And as Mark mentioned, the visitor center, there was a new visitor center that was just completed in December of 2012 over on the west side. And that was a LEED Platinum building. It was funded with the Federal Recovery Act. Stimulus money, I guess. It's got geothermal cooling. It's got off-grid photovoltaic solar array. And is there a statue of one of the Condors, or what is it? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that place is pretty extraordinary. We've received a lot of positive feedback about that, and a lot of people who are very excited to bring people up to see that place now. I think sometimes some folks on the west side felt like we didn't have anything for them. But as soon as you walk in, there's a big life-size bronze casting of a condor. And those facilities are meant to be accessible to everyone. The exhibits are in Spanish and English. There are lots of tactile things like the bronze condor. So if you're visually impaired, you can still experience part of what there is there in the visitor center. And we're also working on open captioning for the new park film, and listening devices again for visually and those who are hearing impaired.
Great, it's got all the accessibility features in it.
It does, and those
wonderful.
Amazing LEED features like you mentioned too. We did a few programs on those, and people thought it was kind of neat what we were doing over there.
Great. Let's kind of talk about, with, generally a lot of in the national scale, a lot of the parks are underfunded, and there's been cutbacks in funding that have caused a deficit. $8 million nationally to repair roads, bridges, and buildings and trails, etc. And now we have what's called the Pinnacles Partnership, and maybe you can tell us a little bit what that partnership, what it does, and how it will help maybe the infrastructure and some of the, upgrade some of the park features. Anybody want to talk a bit about that?
Want me to grab that?
Yeah, why don't you grab that?
Well, I've been involved with the Pinnacles Partnership for some years. The organization's only 6 years old, but it's a registered nonprofit, and it's what people in the National Park Service call a friends group. And nearly every national park has one. Besides offering people a chance to affiliate themselves with the park in some way and to support it with volunteer time and with donations, it also it can work as an adjunct to the National Park Service in some ways that are probably less apparent to the public. For example, when an event takes place at the park, it's much more expeditious for a nonprofit friends group to handle some of the nuts and bolts of that. Because the National Park Service is an extension of the federal government, it's more complicated, for example, to arrange for, just pulling one out of thin air, catering, for example, because all of the rules of fair play and seeking competitive bids and all that come into play. But nonprofits aren't bound by that. So it's much more expeditious sometimes for the Friends Group to step in and do those things. And if you've been to Yosemite National Park, you've certainly encountered the Friends Group there, the Yosemite Association. And so different parks, the Friends Groups look very different. They have different missions, and that's reflective of the uniqueness of each park.
Is there more than one group? Because I was doing a Google search and I thought there's a birder group that's out there, and climbers. And
there is a group affiliated with climbers. There's another group of volunteers that is called the Advanced Search and Rescue Group. Mostly what they do is well, Nichole, a lot of time on the trails, interfacing with people before they get themselves into a bind. So as you mentioned, sometimes it's rather warm out on the trails at Pinnacles. So those volunteers are packing water and making sure people are hydrated and adequately equipped so that they can fully enjoy their experience there.
That's great.
You know, a lot of people in San Benito County, now that we have the national park status, they're wondering, well, what does this mean to us here locally, our economy? And there's been some, you know, some writing about possibly being a gateway, some gateway community opportunities. And I just want to quote Sam Farr, who says that the Pinnacles is more than just rock formations. It provides refuge for the California condor and has great potential for tourism revenue. And a study done in 2003 looked at the California national parks and found that they created 30,000 jobs and generated $514 million in personal income. So I think, you know, we have to think about, you know, have an open mind here and thinking about, now that we have the Pinnacles being a national park, how can it help San Benito County and, you know, get up off our, on our heels and start making some money and get some revenue in our coffers here. You want to take some comments about that?
Well, I like to think of the gateway opportunity as one that doesn't exist only in San Benito. One of the things that makes Pinnacles kind of unique is that the state highway that visitors use to gain access to the park, both on the east and the west sides, doesn't connect in the middle. And it won't, because much of Pinnacles National Park is a designated wilderness area, which by definition is roadless. So we've really got gateways coming from the east side access points in King City and Hollister and San Juan Bautista. And then the west side, let's say you mentioned Soledad. And I think those opportunities exist regionally for all of these communities. And it's an opportunity, I think, for us to virtually connect that highway through those gateway communities, and for us all to work in concert, smarter toward greater effect than we could do working individually.
I hope so, because I mean, you look at the west side, and you know, Monterey has such a wonderful tourism industry, and I think it's, you know, it's right in their backyard, and we need to put some more focus on the eastern side so we can bring people in our county, because I think people naturally go to Monterey, and that would be a simple hop over to the west side. So I think we have to really get some interest from the public and everybody else to try to get the eastern side some recognition. So
I think visiting both sides is worth the trouble. There's, I think, a little more visitation on the eastern side now, but each entrance to the park differs so markedly, and entering the park on the west side is one of the most dramatic wilderness experiences you could have any place. I mean, you round a bend in the road, and there's this absolutely stunning panorama in front of you that's just unparalleled. There's nothing else like it.
I still remember my first time out there. It was a big impression, but you know. But I find it ironic that we were talking about Schuyler Hain, that he was a homesteader down there that kind of helped bring this to local prominence. He was like the forebearer of ecotourism. He was like, you know, here we are like 100 years ago. He was also head guide, was giving, you know, taking people on guided tours out there. So not only did he recognize the geologic significance and the cultural significance, but he also wanted to help his own business. So I find here we are 100 years later, and we're still trying to work in the ecotourism into our county.
I think it's cool also that Mr. Hain's descendants remain very much a part of the San Benito County community today. And the park's links to its roots are alive and thriving. Actually, a portion of the Pinnacles National Park bears Mr. Hain's name. So.
You saw that. That's great.
You know, speaking of Mr. Hain and what you said, dramatic impact, the wilderness and the, you know, the experience of going through the western access to the Pinnacles. If I might just you know, close our segment with a quote from John Muir, who says that everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and cheer and give strength to the body and soul. And I think that's what the Pinnacles provides. Yeah. So, is there a website that you can share with the viewers who want to get involved? Check out the general management plan or learn more about the Pinnacles National Park?
Sure. www.nps.gov/BIN.
Okay. You got some.
Excuse me.
There
Thank
you
you.
go.
Well, I really want to, thank you, Nichole
Yes.
and Mark. It's great having you back.
It's great news.
And it's great news. And gosh, it's exciting. The future of the Pinnacles being a national park and what it means to our local community. I really want to thank you guys for coming on the show today. And
Well, thank you, David. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure, and talking about the Pinnacles is one of my favorite topics. So it's been
And
fun.
I want to encourage everybody to get out there because it is quite unique and it's in our backyard, so it's a great place to go.
yeah.
Yeah, come see us.
All right, I will do that. You're okay, right? You want some
Yeah.
water? Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Give you
Okay,
the Heimlich
great.
here.
Great. Well, thanks again, and we'll hope to see you soon. Okay. All right.
All right.
Wonderful. Hey, we're back watching Going Green, and Shawn and I would like to talk to you guys about a new feature for our show. This is going on our 3rd year, and we want to know what you think about the show. If you have any topics or that you want us to cover, or if you want to be a guest on our show, what do you think, Shawn?
Yeah, whatever. Just some feedback. Like us to expand on some topics we already covered, but just give us some feedback so we know that we're reaching you and reaching our community.
Right. So if you do have some comments or suggestions for the show, you can send Debbie Taylor, who's the executive director with the San Benito Chamber of Commerce. We'll give you her email address, and it'll also be shown on the screen. It's debbie@sanbenitocountychamber.com. So this was it was wonderful to have Nichole and Mark on our show today to talk about the national park status for the Pinnacles. And next month we will have
Assemblyman Alejo.
Louis Alejo. Right?
Yeah, which is great.
I'm sure we'll have a lot to go over with
He's
Louis.
been doing some good work. I want to hear what he's been up to. I understand he just got married to Mission San Juan Batista in December, so
Yes,
that's kind of cool.
I saw something on Facebook to that effect.
We're looking forward to having him.
Yeah. So hey, I know I really enjoy doing this show, Shawn, and having great guests. And we want to thank you for watching Going Green, and we will see you next time.